Hi, I'm Carol Steele. I also had a wonderful father. My dad used to take us with him all the time. He was a government trapper. He would go and catch furs for the farmers so that the wild animals wouldn't eat all their sheep or cattle. So he'd be up in the mountains all the time. He would take me and my sisters and brothers and all of our friends. We would all jump in the truck and go with him. Mama would make a great big lunch. She made salads and potato chips. We would take a big watermelon that we would put in the creek to keep cold. We would take hot dogs and marshmallows and we would make a big bonfire and roast them. And have a nice big lunch and take it up the canyon. And would all go up there and play games and eat and have a good time. Then Dad would start looking at his traps, and on the way back out of the canyon, he would stop at one place and we would get out and run as fast as we could to see if we could beat him down to the forks in the canyon. Dad would have to stop and check a trap and then drive a little ways further. A few times we made it down to the forks before he did. If we didn't make it the whole way, he'd stop and he'd pick us up. The younger ones would usually be picked up first. It was really a lot of fun. We'd have nut fights. They were a plant that grew up there about 3 inches long and were brown. We would pick them off and throw them at each other. We would have a lot of fun. We used to pick berries and thread them, and make necklaces out of them. I remember sitting on the hood of the truck with a needle and thread and making jewelry out of the red berries that we found up the canyon. We just had a lot of fun up the canyons. We loved to walk and we loved to hike up the canyons. The whole North Ward would go with us and it was so fun to see who could beat down the canyon. To where Dad would pick us up, anyone who went with us had so much fun that they all wanted to go whenever they could. We always seemed to find a lizard or a horny toad on the way down. This is not something he did once or twice, but we did it 4 or 5 times a week. We spent a lot of time doing this and Mom always made a great big lunch and we really enjoyed ourselves. Mom and Dad always sang everywhere they went. They were beautiful singers. Everywhere they went they would sing. They would be in the front of the truck singing and we'd always be in the back. We'd sing too, but we weren't very good singers, but we had a lot of fun. Dad was a government trapper most of my life, but when I moved away from home he worked at the rubber plant, in his older years. I went to get him for lunch one day and as I turned the corner the steering went out in my car. It scared me to death. I started going right toward the other cars. I jammed my foot on the brake real hard and it somehow jerked me sort of out of the road. This was a terrifying experience for me. I thought I was going to wreck for sure. We had chores that we had to do when we were young. One day I remember my dad said, "Carol, go out and get some wood." We had a coal stove so we had to burn wood and coal. So I went out to get some wood to start the fire. I came back in with 3 little pieces of wood. I brought them in and Dad said, "I said go out and get some wood." So I went out the door and slammed the door and broke the window. Well, Dad had been hunting and had hip boots on that went up clear to the top of his leg. He grabbed the razor strap and took off after me. I took off running and I'd dodge a tree and he'd take off for the tree and I would dodge another one. I ran all over the whole lot. Finally I ran around the rock garden. I stubbed my toe on a rock and fell. I remember laying there bawling my head off. Dad came up and took one look at me and felt sorry for me. He didn't even give me the lickin'. So I almost got a lickin' once. That's the only lickin' that I remember of almost getting. I had a wonderful mom and dad with lots of patience. My dad took us fishing a lot, he just loved to fish. All my brothers and sisters used to love to go with him too. He'd take the whole family. Mom always came and even Grandma, and being that some of their uncle and aunts lived close they would go fishing too. We would go out to Mona Reservoir and we'd wade out in the water until it was up around our waists. Dad would bring us each a couple of big sticks with forks on them. We would each get 2 of them and we'd rest our poles on the sticks so we wouldn't have to hold them. Then we were free to splash around in the water. Dad would wear his big hip boots out there. One day he was out fishing and a great big hooked onto his pole and took off with it. Dad jumped in and swam after him. He had those heavy hip boots on. We were scared that he was going to drown. He went swimming clear out there in the middle and finally he came back with a fishing pole. We thought sure he was going to be drowned. He scared us all to death. We did have a lot of fun though, and we'd always take a picnic everywhere we went. We played in the water and caught fish. Dad would go fishing everywhere. He'd take us up the canyon or at Burriston's. We have one picture of us fishing one day when we went out to Hubba Dam fishing. Dad took us out there fishing. I remember Donna and I had the mumps, so we had hats on to cover up our fat cheeks. We all loved to fish and went fishing a lot. I remember one day fishing up the canyon and everyone was tired of it so they quit. I remember I kept fishing while they went back to camp. All of a sudden I ended up with a great big trout. I remember how happy I was to run back and show everybody that I caught that great big trout. It really made me happy and proud to think that everybody gave up and I kept fishing and caught the big trout.